Hello and welcome. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception, and we're back in the book of Genesis. We're here in the account of the post-flood. So we're still with Noah and his family. But we are going today cover a lot of real estate. I didn't even think of that in advance as a pun, because we are going to geographically cover a lot of territory, but we're going to cover a good bit of territory as far as the amount of the text of Genesis that we're going to cover. There's some genealogies in here that we will talk about, but we will not dwell on in depth as to the particulars. But what we're covering today is very important because it connects some very important events, and the text itself makes those connections. And we're going to be taking a look, providing we advance far enough, we will be taking a look at the divine counsel and how all of that plays into God's activity with man. So, without further ado, let's begin. And I'm just going to read a couple verses from what we covered last time, because it gets us up to speed. The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. Notice I've got that highlighted. That is very important and will continue to be very important. And if this were, and I'm not, but if you ever have seen, I haven't been to, but one of the cult showings of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, there were certain things that people would do at certain times, throw things or make sounds or whatever, right? For the Israelites, when they saw Canaan, they all in their minds went boo and hiss. Okay? Bad people, bad guys. That's the way they viewed it. And we'll have that in many other instances in the text today. These were the sons of Noah, and from these, the people of the whole earth were dispersed. Just setting the stage there, that from these people, it all got spread out. Now, what we're going to deal with first, and we will, in honor of Dr. Michael Heiser, who recently was called home to glory, we will make this statement. I had my own way of saying it for years, but I just like the succinct way Michael Heiser would put this. If it is weird, it matters. If it is weird, it's important. Okay? And definitely here, what we're going to cover is weird, and it is unpleasant. Let's read the text. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. This is definitely weird. Even if, and we won't, even if you just take exactly what the text says and look at it, and you look at what Ham did, who is called who? Ham, the father of Canaan. And you look at what Ham did, what we're told here, we look at it and say, that's just weird and kind of juvenile. And then you look at the reaction And you think, I know that was weird, but the reaction is a little bit over the top. The scriptures, the Old Testament, frequently uses euphemism. Euphemism is a fancy term for that's a nice way of putting something. Okay. Just like euthanasia is a good death. That's what the EU at the beginning, that's what it means, good. A euphemism is a nice way of putting something. It's how you clean something up so that you're using code. You're using a term that everybody knows what it means, but you're not saying it because this was going to be read in the synagogue. It was going to be connected with worship, etc. So what euphemistically, or what is the euphemism covering up? You know, I'll give you another example of how euphemism is used in the Bible. They say he went into the inner chamber. It was the indoor toilet. It'll say he was covering his feet. It meant he was going to the bathroom. The different things to clean things up, just to make it more acceptable. Everyone, the audience, the author and the audience know what's being said. But they can use these terms to make it more acceptable to talk about, just more comfortable. That's the better way to put it, more comfortable. They still know how bad it was, but it makes it more comfortable. So when it says that, first of all, Noah got hammered, Noah got drunk, and it's the first time drunkenness is mentioned in the Bible. And don't forget that. The first time drunkenness is mentioned in the Bible, there's this horribly unpleasant thing connected with it. He was a man of the soil, became a man of the soil. There are many things. Noah is the new Adam. Okay? It's all starting over with him, isn't it? It all started with Adam. He was the only one. And then his family populated the earth. Well, that same thing is going to happen with Noah. He's the one from whom all the population of the earth comes. So just as you know you're related to Adam, you can know that you are related to Noah. He planted his vineyard, he got drunk, and he lay uncovered in his tent. Let's just cut to the chase and talk about the euphemism. The scriptures use talking about your father's nakedness. That's his wife. This is talking about sexual relations. You weren't allowed to see your father's nakedness. That means you weren't allowed, and I'm sorry, this is unpleasant, you weren't allowed, the law prohibited you from having sex with your mother. And it seems like, why did the law need to? Because it was common around the world in the different perverted, twisted, sick, satanic, demonic religions. It was not uncommon. It was very common. The same phrase, the nakedness of his father, it would also be the nakedness of your uncle or whatever. The different places where certain sexual relations were prohibited. I'm not going to go look at all those references. It's there in the Torah where it's talking about sexual interaction between people. What was acceptable, what was not acceptable. Ham went in and slept with his mother. Whether that was forcible or she was drunk too, we don't know. And isn't this unpleasant to talk about? He went in and slept with his mother while his dad was hammered. Whether it was molestation or what, we're not told. What was that about? It was a power grab. It was a power play. In the sick, twisted mind, if mom is also my wife, then that brings me up in the status of the family. That's why he went out and told his brothers, I'm now a big cheese, is what he was thinking, or something like that. And it's difficult, and I'll say I don't want to, but it's difficult to get in the mind of someone who thinks this way. And I don't want to. All we need to know is this is sick. It's unpleasant. There's a good reason they used euphemism to talk about it. And it's going to carry a very harsh penalty. And Shem and Japheth, they do the right thing. They're covering it up. And exactly, is that kind of a metaphorical statement and description of, we don't know. We will happily move on. When Noah awoke from his wine, so you've got it combined that he's got a hangover of major proportion, and he finds out what his youngest son had done to him. He was very unhappy, and this curse is going to be applied to the whole family. And that's pretty harsh. That's why it's cursed be Canaan. Now, was Canaan involved in this too? We don't know. We don't know. But as we go through what's called the Table of Nations, and you go through the descendants of Ham, guess what? And maybe it's just that Ham was that guy, and that as upsetting as it was to Dad, it didn't surprise him that it was Ham who would do such a thing. And think of what was at stake. We'll go back to that just a moment. There were only three sons. Who was going to be the big cheese? Think of the power that was going to be available if you were the head of the clan that was going to be the prominent clan. The whole earth was theirs. Just saying. But all the descendants of Ham, all those people who, when we went through the book of Joshua and Exodus, if you took that journey with us, there were all the ites, the Girgashites, the Canaanites. They're all the bad guys. They're all the ones who were to be wiped out. They're all the ones where the Nephilim were. Interesting. And this all is going to tie in as we progress here with Genesis 6, 1-4, that incursion of evil when the sons of God came down and went into the sons of man and had children by them. It's all going to be tied together. And it's taken us right to the Tower of Babel. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers. A slave of slaves is a more concise and clear way to state that. They use the word interchangeably, but he's like the lowest of slaves in the order of the family is what he is saying. Shall he be to his brothers. He also blessed then Shem, and he blessed Japheth as well. But Shem was the big one who gets blessed here. He was the older brother, and Japheth is going to get to some degree, ride on his coattails. Okay. And as we get ready to move into the genealogies, which is where we go next here in chapter 10, and this is called the Table of Nations. Okay. As we look at this, we need to keep in mind that genealogies are not exhaustive. It may seem exhausting to read them sometimes. There, I made a funny. They're not exhaustive. It doesn't cover everybody. Generations can be skipped. The important ones are talked about, and you do the same thing. If you're related to whoever, General Patton or President Theodore Roosevelt, you'll skip a lot of people to get back to him to make sure and point that out. The important people are always called out, the significant ones. And the same thing goes on in biblical genealogies. But let's hit this. Noah lived 950 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. When we get to the genealogy of Shem, which we'll cruise over quickly, notice what happens with the ages. Part of what God had said was that he will not put up with man. He's not going to live that long. His age will be, and I'm forgetting the phraseology for it, it's going to be shorter. The lifespans of men are going to be shorter. Noah is the last guy to make 900 plus years. Okay. These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. So let's make sure and hit this generations thing, okay? Generations, that is the major heading, and there are 10 of them in the book of Genesis. You've got the generations of the heavens and the earth. You've got the generations of Adam. You've got the generations of on and on and on. Here we're to the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But there are 10. In Moses' mind, there were 10 divisions in the book of Genesis. Sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of, I'm trying to decide whether I should read all of these. I can cruise through them fairly quickly. And let's see. Yeah, I'll read over them fast. And that way you'll know I'm not just trying to skip over them because the names are hard to pronounce. But I do want to point out that as we go through this and we look at the sons of Japheth and the sons of Ham, if you total them up, and feel free to count because I've done it, as you total them up, the ones that are listed, guess how many there are? There are 70. 70. That's a key number. This is the table of nations. The nations that God is going to assign to the control of the B'nai Elohim after the Tower of Babel, tying in with Genesis 32, and we'll look at all of that. The sons of Japheth: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer: Ashkenaz, Riphath, Togarmah. And the sons of Javan: Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. From these, the coastland people spread in their lands, each with his own language by their clans in their nations. Also, chronologically, the author has in the literature here, the author has the right to put things in whatever order he wants. When he's talking about them spreading out and each according to their own language, that's what's going to happen after the Tower of Babel. Chronologically, this comes after Babel when they're spreading out. The sons of Ham: Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush: Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Raamah, and Sabteka. The sons of Raamah: Sheba and Dedan. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning, now, we're going to come back to him. You know, we use the word in common use today, Nimrod is like a dummy. You know, it's like a dunderhead, or people will, I just heard it in something I was watching the other day. Somebody called somebody a Nimrod. Well, that's not the way they used that word, but we're going to come back to Nimrod, and Nimrod's going to take us right back to Genesis 6, and then he's going to take us right to the Tower of Babel. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Tower of Babel. From that land, he went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, that is the great city. Egypt fathered Lodum, Anamim, Lahebam, Naphtahim. See, now I'm starting to think about them too much. And the trick to read these names is don't think about them, just read them. Parthrusim, Casluhim, from whom the Philistines came. Philistines. Notice all the eens and the ites. And Caphtorim. Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Arkites, and the Sinites. From and the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Afterward, the clans of Canaanites were dispersed, and the territory of the Canaanites extended from Sidon in the direction of Gerar as far as Gaza, in the direction of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. To Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japheth, children were born. The sons of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, Aram. The sons of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arphaxad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. To Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg, and in his days the earth was divided. Translate Tower of Babel. He's putting a pin in the map on the timeline for you. And his brother's name was Joktan. Joktan fathered Alomadad, Sheleph, Azmav, that one got me, Azarmaveth, Jerah, Hadoram, Uzal, Diklah, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. The territory in which they lived extended from Mesha in the direction of Sephar to the hill country of the east. These are the sons of Shem by their clans, their languages, their peoples, their lands, and their nations. These are the clans of the sons of Noah according to their genealogies in their nations, and from these the nations spread abroad on the earth after the flood. So he just told you this is all these, where they went, where they settled, what they did was after the Tower of Babel. Now I told you that we're going to go back to Nimrod. Back to Nimrod. So Nimrod, when we look at him, we need to go back, because what does it say about him? He was a mighty man, a mighty hunter before the Lord, etc. So if we go back and look at Genesis 6, which we have to do to understand what's going on here. Now read Genesis 6, 1 through 4. When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. There's that phraseology I was talking about. It's 120 years he's going to cut their lifespans back to. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. And that phrasing, mighty men, it's the same right here. He was the first on the earth to be a mighty man. In Genesis 6, and we said this at the time, the Nephilim, and what are Nephilim? I'm not going to assume that everyone knows this. These sons of God are the B'nai Elohim. They are part of God's heavenly council. You'll hear it described as the heavenly host. They were high-ranking spiritual beings, and Elohim is the word for God. It simply means spirit entity. A different kind of being than we are. They can take physical form. Just because they're spirits doesn't mean that they can't take physical form. The scriptures make it clear that they can, and they do. They came, they took human wives, and what they had as offspring were the Nephilim. They were giants. That's where Goliath comes from. He was a descendant from them, okay? So these mighty men, these giants were in the earth. And this is not, and we cannot use the way history is taught today as a way of understanding what the ancient texts and that's a plural, talk about. Giants, there being giants, that there were gods, and these are not gods in the sense that our God is God. He's the Lord Most High. He is the God. These are created spiritual entities. God Almighty was not created. But throughout the world, throughout ancient texts, things that we have found, archaeological discoveries that we have found, there were giants who dwelt on the earth. There are all kinds of structures out there that there's no way human beings made them, and I have seen some of them down in Peru. Stones that no human beings can carve and shape and mold the way they were carved, shaped, and molded, and moved. All kinds of evidence for this, but the texts themselves, whether you're looking at texts from Babylon or Assyria or Egypt or wherever you want to go, the Incas, the Aztecs, over in Asia, all over the place, there are texts all over the world that talk about these entities, that talk about this as a given. And no, that's not the way history is taught. But you go and look at the text and you listen to those who study them, because you have to be able to read the languages, be able to study them, and I'm not capable of that. But people like Michael Heiser will tell you this was common knowledge. This is the way things were done. Baal, the god, the high god of the Canaanites, was believed to live on top of his mountain with 70 deities under him. 70, like the 70 nations that I listed off in the Table of Nations. And I misspoke and said it was just the descendants of Ham and Japheth. It was also the descendants of Shem, but we'll get to that more later on. So these Nephilim, after the flood, apparently the same thing went on again. These entities came and intermarried with women and produced these giants. And the whole in Joshua, all of the places where they go in and God says, kill them all, wipe them all out. That not every place got that treatment. The places that did, like where the Girgashites lived and the Horites and others, all the ites, that's where the Nephilim were. The incursion of evil in Genesis 6 was, man, I just made a connection in my head. Ham made a power play with his father to take over by, in his mind, marrying mom. It was a power grab. These entities who knew they had been damned, who had been condemned in Genesis 3, that the offspring of the woman would crush Satan's head. And he was the head of all of them. And they rebelled, and a third of them were cast out of heaven with him. It was a power grab. By coming in and intermarrying with humans, they could pollute the genealogy and prevent God's plan that they didn't view as our salvation, but their destruction. That's why God is, rather harsh in how they are to be treated. And who was it who wiped out the last of them? King David. King David, his mighty men, who weren't those kind of mighty men, he and his mighty men, it is detailed for us, went around and wiped them all out. The one who is the prototype of the Savior, Jesus, David, went around and wiped them out. This was a spiritual power grab. This was spiritual warfare. And they were going to, as much as they were able, lead a revolt. And that's what happens after God puts other spiritual entities in charge of the nations. But we will get back to that when we get to the Tower of Babel. And we're going to go there right now. And don't forget, just flew past it here. And Calneh in the land of Shinar. Shinar. That was another one of those boo and hiss things for the children of Israel. Shinar is Babylon. And Assyria, Nineveh. It was Assyria that wiped out the northern kingdom. It was Babylon that wiped out and didn't wipe it out, but hauled into captivity and devastated the southern kingdom of Judah. This is loaded stuff, and we have to get our minds around it, and we need to understand it if we are to understand the narrative of salvation in its entirety. The Tower of Babel. And make sure, ready? Here, click the button that says I'm going to de-Sunday schoolify my thinking about this. This is about much more than them just being naughty and doing what they were told not to do. This is, just as Genesis 6 was satanic, spiritual incursion of evil to war against God and his promises, his promise of salvation for his people, all people, and the destruction of the forces of evil aligned against him and those same people, those children that he cherished. The Tower of Babel is another such incursion, another such rebellion. Now, the whole earth had one language and the same words. We don't appreciate what all that means. We're going to here be talking about language. And if any of you are multilingual, if any of you have studied other languages, perhaps ancient languages, you appreciate this. Thinking is wedded to language inseparably. Pick a language. People who speak Mandarin think differently than you do. People who speak French think differently than you do. Culture, language, thought. It is like a cord woven with those three things. And because people who speak English and French and other European languages, they have a hard time understanding Russians who speak Russian, but their thinking is really more Asian than it is, for lack of a better term, Caucasian. They think differently about things, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just the way it is. People who speak Spanish think differently. It's not just that the language, the words are different. Language unites. A diversity of languages separates. It puts up obstacles. Things are misunderstood, just how you say things. When I went and lived in Peru as a missionary, and my wife worked diligently to help me, you can't say that way. You can't phrase things that way. They'll take it differently than you intend it. So be careful. I mean, just hand gestures and other things that are harmless in America, they're not harmless down there. They're either insulting or rude. The thinking is different. So when God divided, and it literally says he confused their languages, it separated people in a big way. But why did he do it? Now, the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said, "This far we will go and no farther." What was the original directive from God? They were to fill the earth and subdue it. Now, Noah, the new Adam, his family was told to fill the earth, populate it, spread out, go places. And in so doing, represent God, image him here in his creation, working in partnership with him. It's what God always wanted. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed from the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, "Behold," well, we'll stop there before we get to what the Lord says. They went so far and they said, "We're not going to do it. This is rebellion." God said, "Go spread out and populate the earth." And instead, this is a power grab. And he didn't need to restate here that Nimrod was the ruler here, because everybody knew Nimrod was the ruler here. Just like you can talk about Germany, Nazi Germany in the 30s and early 40s, and you don't have to tell anybody that Hitler was in charge. That's the first thing that comes to mind is Adolf Hitler when you talk about Nazi Germany. Okay. When you talk about the North in the Civil War, you don't have to remind anybody. And yes, Abraham Lincoln was the president. You don't have to. Okay. Everybody knew this is where Nimrod was. And he laid it out in the last chapter. Everybody knew that this Gibborim, this mighty man, this Nephilim was ruling here. And he led the people in rebellion, and they made a tower. And they said, first of all, a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves. What's wrong with that thinking? First of all, a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. The whole idea here, and I'm going to bring down from up here on my other screen. This is a good representation of the Tower of Babel. It's a structure that's called a ziggurat. And it was pretty big. It was pretty tall. There are documents, things written on stone from Babylon that tell us a great deal about this ziggurat. It was pretty tall. You see down here, that's the Great Pyramid at Giza. Here is this ziggurat. It's pretty big. That's the tallest building ever built. It's in Chicago, ever built with brick. Okay. But this is the structure. It is 300 feet high. Okay. This is quite likely the Tower of Babel. But do you see it's up in the clouds? There where Babylon is flat. So remember, where does God live? Gods live on mountains. It's where Baal was. The Garden of Eden was where? It was on a mountain. It was a garden and on a mountain. Those are the places that gods live. And what was it that was in Babylon? The Hanging Gardens? Kind of interesting. But anyway, God had said that he wouldn't dwell with people that way anymore, and he kicked them out. This is directly trying to undo that. A city and a tower with its top in the heavens. God won't come to us. We'll go to him. In effect, we're bringing him down. And let us make a name for ourselves. And that title, I'm not going to get into the language and the particulars. That title of Gibborim, a man of renown, all of those things, it's about a big name. And Nimrod was a big name. He was an important guy. Okay, there are others that are recorded in history, Gilgamesh and others. It was about reputation. It was about it being about me and not God. And all the people went along with it. And we still go along with it today. And let us make a name for ourselves. And that's put out there as a positive. Go out, son, make a name for yourself. No, we are to honor God. I exist for him. I exist by his blessing. I don't want to go out and make a name for myself. I want to go out and image, represent him. Christ is formed in me, is being formed in me more and more. I want people to see that. I don't want them to see me. I'm a veritable gold mine of adamant shortcomings. I want them to see the Lord when they look at me. It's not about making a name for myself. Lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. He's scattering us out. And it's always the same lie. God doesn't have the best things in mind for you. Yeah, he wants you to scatter out and go out and live in the hustings way out there in Siberia. He doesn't have good things in mind for you. Same lies, all condensed and packaged in one slick ploy right here. And wow, you can have it all. You can have that great tower. You can be wonderful, mighty people. We're going to rule it all. Sounds just like Ham with what he was trying to do in his rebellion and perversion against his father and mother and his brothers. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower. You get that? It's like a little speck on the earth as far as he's concerned. And he comes down like he needs to get close and imagine with a magnifying glass. And he's looking at it and he's like, oh, isn't that cute? They think they're going to, except he didn't think it was cute. Isn't that quaint? They think they're going to rebel. They think they're going to do things their own way. They think that they can seize their destiny and control it all. Well, guess what? It's not going to work out. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people and have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they purpose to do will now be impossible for them. They were able to be united and led. He was going to divide them. He was going to confuse them, and he didn't really mean anything that they could do. In part, he's mocking them. God can be very sarcastic. He can be very sarcastic, and we miss it, and we think he's saying something that he's not because we don't expect it. We don't expect him to be sarcastic. This is pure sarcasm, and nothing that they propose to do now will be impossible for them. It's sarcasm, although he does know that because they're able to be united, because they don't speak different languages, there's no tribalism going on, that they can cause a lot of trouble and a lot of problems. More than anything, his plan of salvation was going to be put on hold because of what they were doing. It was just going to be a hindrance to it all. Come, let us, now pay attention, listen carefully. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore, its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of the earth. You get that ending? They didn't want to disperse. He dispersed them. You're not going to do what I say. You're not going to obey. You're not going to listen. Poof. He made them. He made them. Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? God sits in heaven and laughs. He holds them in derision. Psalm 2, little bit of a paraphrase. God is going to accomplish his purposes. He will only put up with so much nonsense, rebellion, pushing back. His will shall be carried out. Period. No ifs, no ands, and no buts. And whatever he has to do to bring that about will happen. Just like if what he has to do is send his son to pay for the sins of the world to the cross, then that is what he's going to do. Verse 7. Come, pay attention to the pronouns. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. Us. This is divine counsel talk. And if you have not read Unseen Realm or And I swear I don't know why I can't ever remember the name of the other book. But if you haven't read Michael Heiser's stuff, if you haven't, you can just Google, YouTube, Michael Heiser Divine Counsel. There's great stuff out there, him teaching about it. You don't even have to read the book. And I'll pop the picture up on the screen of the book. It's on my website, www.decodingthedeception.com. Go to books, theology, and it's there. Very important to understand this. God has a council of divine entities who work with him, and he talks to them often. He talked to them in creation when he said, "Let us make man in our own image." That's not talking about the Trinity. The Trinity was not known in its doctrinal form as we have it. There was the Trinity, but they didn't understand the Trinity. God hadn't put it out there for them yet. He's talking to the other members of the divine council. He plans with them. He talks with them. He asks them for advice. It's in the book of Job. Satan comes by and he asks Satan questions. There are different places where he interacts with them, and it's very clear. In Psalm 82, he condemns those who rebelled. This is everywhere in the Old Testament, and it's not just the Old Testament. It's all the other ancient religions. They all had their pantheon of gods. Now, that's a perverted concept from the true God and his true counsel. It is those who rebelled against him who created those pantheons, who stood in as those divine entities and led the nations astray. And we're going to go to that in just a moment, but let us go down there and confuse their language. He was talking to his council. He's talking to them. They're looking around at each other, and he's speaking, saying, "Let us go down and do this." And then what does it say? Verse 8, "So Yahweh, the Lord, dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth." He talked with his council. It's always his action. Do you own a company? Have you commanded in the military? Been in any kind of a position of authority? You can take input from others, and it shows God taking input from others in his counsel in the Old Testament. You can take input from other, but you're the one in charge. When the action is taken, it's your action. You may send one of them to do it, but it's your decision. Book of Daniel, it says this is from the decree of the Watchers, another title by which those entities go. They talked about it, and God went along with what they said and said, "Yeah, that's a good idea. Go do it." God doesn't need their input, but he wants it. God doesn't need our input, but he wants it. He likes to work in community. It's why he places us in community, like family, like church, all of those things. Now, we're going to go and take a look at Deuteronomy 32, 8 and 9, because this is where Moses is talking about what went on at a higher level when the Tower of Babel went on down here, and God talked to his council and said, "Let us go down and confuse their language and spread them out." They did that. But there was something else that went on that we're not told about until Deuteronomy 32. And this is in Moses' farewell sermon to the children of Israel before he dies. It's a very lengthy address that he makes to them. But there he says this, and he's giving it to them as a given. You know this stuff because it was part of their worldview. It's not your worldview. It's their worldview. We need it to be our worldview because it's the correct worldview. And if we don't understand it, then a whole lot of the Old Testament is confusion to us, and we just miss stuff. And I can tell you that for the vast majority of my life as a theologian, as a pastor, as a teacher, as a professor, I miss this stuff. And that's why I am so thankful to God for Dr. Michael Heiser, because he introduced it to me. And my wife will tell you, my family will tell you, I went on for some time going, I can't believe I wasn't taught this. I can't believe I went to school for 8 years and they didn't teach me this stuff. And in most of Christendom, it is not taught. It's the way to deal with stuff like here, Deuteronomy 32, 8, and 9, is to look at it and say, well, that's weird. We don't know what to do about that. We won't talk about it much. Moving on, and flip the page and go to the next chapter. But this is vitally important to understanding God's working of salvation. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he did what? Divided mankind. Well, hey, I think that's the Tower of Babel. He fixed the borders of the peoples. He spread them out. He said, go all these different places. According to the number of the sons of God, that is, B'nai Elohim. But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted inheritance. Let's talk about according to the number of the sons of God. What God did was he said, you, B'nai Elohim Larry, you watch after the Girgashites, and you all watch over the ones in Lud. You're in charge of them. Mind them. Keep them in line as best you can. And they were to do that as God's servants. I'm going to do, while this is going on with the 70 nations who are out there, and you're keeping an eye on them, I'm starting from scratch. I'm starting from scratch. But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob, his allotted inheritance. And listen to this, and then go read the beginning of, well, right after the text we're at now, the end of chapter 11 and the beginning of chapter 12, with the call of Abram. But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob, his allotted heritage. He found him in a desert land, and in the howling waste of the wilderness, he encircled him. He cared for him. He kept him as the apple of his eye, like an eagle that stirs up its nest, that flutters over its young, spreading out its wings, catching them, bearing them on its pinions. The Lord alone guided him. No foreign god was with him. It goes on. God said, you divine entities, you lesser divine entities, watch over the nations. Keep them in line. I'm taking this guy here in Ur of the Chaldeans, the son of Terah, Abram, and I will start a new nation. I will start from scratch, and I will keep him separate and distinct. And through them, I will bring about my plan of salvation. You keep those guys in line. Well, the problem was those guys who were in charge of the other nations, they kind of liked it. They kind of liked it. They kind of liked being Horus and Osiris and Baal and all of those names they came up with for themselves. And so they created perverted versions of what God was and his counsel and the people under him, his creation, and made it for themselves and deceived the nations. That's what happened. That's why there are all of these different religions, whether it's Egyptian religion or Babylonian religion or Greek religion or Roman religion or Aztec or Inca or Maya or wherever you want to go around the globe, and they're all pretty much the same thing. Different weird goofy entities that are the divine entities, but they're all pretty much the same thing. Well, it's all reading off the same sheet music. And it's all perverted versions of the truth, the one true God, because after the Lord, and let me see, got this here. I'm going to find my map of the table of nations. And actually, I'm just going to find it and pop it up. Sorry, this is taking me a minute. These are the nations. All of these names on here, these are the nations that we went through that are rattled off. And God assigned them all to these divine entities. And then you know what? On the day of Pentecost, when the disciples were given what? The ability to speak in these different languages. And that's what it was. It wasn't them babbling in some supposed angelic language. It's not what it says. What happened? We're from Elamites, people from the region of this, that, and the other thing. We hear them telling the glories of God and preaching his gospel in our in our own languages, because God was going to send them from here out all over this known world to proclaim that gospel to what? To reclaim the nations. You hear it all the time in the New Testament as the Gentiles. When you see Gentiles here, nations. God was having fulfilled the salvation of mankind through his son, through what? Abraham and the nation of Israel and David and on down through. Having fulfilled that plan, he sent his disciples rather forcibly, because they weren't going to go. They were going to hang out in Jerusalem and just be chill. But no, he gave them the ability to speak in other languages. And then through persecution, he caused them to be dispersed and scattered through all these regions. And where was it Paul had to get? Paul was not going to be satisfied. He just wasn't going to stop until he got to Spain, Tarshish. That was the end of the world as far as they were concerned. Paul knew his mission of spreading the gospel was going to be complete when he got out there, way out on the fringes of the known world. All of this ties together in what God was doing. So they left off back to Babel. God has assigned the nations and they're all spreading out. And we've got another revolt in heaven that these entities who are supposed to be doing God's will are doing something else. And just on that note, so you don't think that I am making it up. Just a note, in theology, if you just make it up, it's a really bad idea. Psalm 82. Listen to what it says. Keeping in mind everything I just talked about, God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. He's going to let them have it. Are you ready? How long, talking to those who rebelled with the nations underneath them, how long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Selah, meaning think about it. Think about what you've done. Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. That's what government is supposed to do, and that's what God had assigned them as spiritual governors of these lands to do. And why is our earth and our world and our nation and our politics so corrupt? Because this stuff doesn't go on. They're not looking out for the fatherless and maintaining the rights of the afflicted and the destitute. They're serving themselves, just like those divine entities. I refer to them regularly as the lords of hell. They're being just like the demonic entities they serve. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. And then, because you don't do that, what's going on? And tell me if you don't hear what you see when you drive down the road and look out your window. They have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness, and the foundations, all the foundations of the earth are shaken. You made a mess out of things. You didn't do what I said. And he's going to come back in judgment, not just of the sinful people in this world, but of those powers and principalities, those powers of the air. I said, you are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men, you shall die and fall like any prince. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit what? Inherit what? The nations. Now, see that? See the blue light bulb? That's an unseen realm reference. And we're just going to read straight from Michael Heiser from his book, Unseen Realm. Although Yahweh told these Elohim, gods, they would die like men, that he would strip them of their immortality, there is no indication that the threat tempered opposition to Yahweh. The New Testament makes it clear that once the powers of darkness understood that they had been duped by the crucifixion and resurrection, there was a sense that the timetable of their judgment had been set in motion. And Paul says, the reference is escaping me, it's in 1 Corinthians, I think. If they had known, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. They got duped. They got duped. But Revelation 12:12, therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. So, you might think, man, he just backed up a dump truck of theology, a good dump truck, not a bad dump truck, and just loaded a ton of stuff on top of us today. And there is. It's a lot that is here, but that's why this understanding the divine counsel, that having that worldview gives you insight so that you can understand what it is. And we're going to go to it here. Oh, got the wrong way. I have my setup with my microphone and my camera and other things. I can't really see my keyboard when I type, or I bump my microphone. So sometimes I go to type 612 and I get 6.2. We'll just read here in Ephesians 6 where Paul's talking about putting on the full armor of God. Finally, be strong in the Lord, in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. And all of this, see, that's another Michael Heiser note. All of these references are cosmological in nature. They're spiritual, what's being talked about here. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And really, heavenly realms is better. And that's why we need to take up the full armor of God. And I'll say this. When I do, and I'm not doing as much right now because I'm working really hard on cranking up my business so we can support this ministry, and we'll talk about that in a minute with behind the scenes video and photo. If you don't understand this stuff, then you can't really be awake to what's going on in the world. If you think it's just political, you don't get it. If you were like me before, when my eyes were open to this, when I was awakened to this scriptural reality of the fallen ones, the power that they have and how they rule, the authority they were given and abused and still abuse, it was then that I was able to answer the question that I didn't understand for so long. I knew about all the conspiracy stuff. But my struggle with it was always this. Nobody's that organized, thorough, and detailed that all of this stuff can just work together like that. There's no way. Well, but there is a way because it's run by them. It is orchestrated by the demonic forces of darkness, cosmic powers over the present darkness against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And in some of my videos, I use a graphic, and I'll try to remember to pop it in here, a graphic of these evil, creepy, demonic hands moving chess pieces on a board. That is what is going on in this sinful world. But you won't be able to see it for what it is. I'm not concerned about, I am. I'm concerned about many of the things that go on in this world, the deception, the destruction, the warfare on children, on life, on marriage, on the family, on freedom, on thought, on everything. I'm not worried about it just for its own sake. I'm concerned about it and focused on it because it's all spiritual. It's all spiritual. They're always working. They're always there. And they never stop. So we need to be awake. We need to understand this. So I encourage you, I urge you, educate yourself, become knowledgeable, read this stuff, go watch we all prefer to watch videos over reading books. That's fine. Go Google Michael Heiser, Divine Counsel. There are places where there are multi-part videos where he's teaching at a seminar thing. It's all really good stuff. Go educate yourself, spend time in the Word, go check it all out, and then look at the world anew. So I want to share this with you. Very excited about this. This is what we are doing to support this ministry. We do video editing, professional video editing, but that doesn't apply to most of you, but this does. We will scan your photos You got stacks of photos. You got boxes of photos. You got photo albums, and they've been left behind in this digital age. We will scan those for you for 25 cents a piece. Very easy to do. It's all laid out here on this page. I'm putting the link in the description below, but you can come here, use this service. So doing, you support us, and you get your photos preserved digitally forever. You can share them with the entire family. Because if you're like me, we got one box of photos. It's at my sister's house. I'm going to get those photos and run them through this. I've done our own photos here at my house. That way everyone can have them. You can come to this link. We also enhance. And I can tell you, the people who are using our service, they're thrilled. Had somebody send some photos to get enhanced and actually did some repairs on them. They were old photos. They were blown away with how they came out. So come out here, check it out, make use of the service, tell others about the service. Thank you so much. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. God bless and have a great day.